Tudo que a gente faz deixa uma marca. Agora imagina um país que descarta 80 milhões de toneladas de lixo todos os anos. Por isso, o Grupo Boticário assumiu compromissos ambiciosos. Até 2030, vamos solucionar 150% dos resíduos sólidos gerados em nossa cadeia. Tudo que as nossas fábricas produzem e ainda mais, de fornecedores a clientes. Um movimento que vai impactar não apenas o meio ambiente, mas também a vida de 1 milhão de brasileiros. Famílias inteiras terão mais acesso a uma alimentação de qualidade, educação e desenvolvimento. Essa é uma transformação social que vai ajudar a reduzir na prática a desigualdade no país. Sempre fizemos nossa parte. Agora é hora de fazermos ainda mais. Porque se vamos deixar uma marca no planeta, que ela seja positiva. Para que a gente possa entregar um amanhã ainda mais bonito para todos. Compromissos para o futuro Grupo Boticário. Acesse www.umabelezadefuturo.com.br.
Boa tarde a todos, sejam muito bem-vindos. Quero agradecer a presença de vocês que estão nos acompanhando no Melhores do ESG, repensando o valor de tudo. Iniciamos hoje a segunda semana de debates de um total de mais de 30 dias discutindo ESG e uma média de 60 painéis de debates com 150 speakers. Realmente é o maior evento online gratuito sobre ESG do Brasil. Pois bem, ESG, um tema que vem ganhando cada vez mais relevância nos últimos anos. E quando a gente fala dessa relevância, a gente não está falando só de consumidores que estão adotando novos hábitos de consumo e escolhendo empresas que também estão alinhadas à temática ESG, mas os investidores, né, que cada vez mais estão atentos aí para o fato de que essas empresas serão mais rentáveis no longo prazo. Muito bem, por se tratar de algo relativamente novo, né, pelo menos no Brasil, a escassez é muito grande de pessoas bem qualificadas para lidar com essas questões. E aí, foi pensando nisso que a Exame Academy, em parceria com a Trevisan Escola de Negócios, revolucionam mais uma vez e lançam um MBA executivo em ESG e Impact. Aí vai uma surpresa especial para quem está acompanhando o nosso evento. Nós vamos sortear aí uma bolsa de estudo de 50% para o MBA em ESG Impact por semana. Então todo mundo tem aí muitas chances de conseguir essa bolsa. Para você ter mais informações sobre como concorrer a este super prêmio, é só apontar a câmera do seu celular para o QR Code que está aparecendo aqui na tela e se inscrever. Mas vamos ao que importa no dia de hoje, falando sobre Cradle to Cradle. Nossa convidada é a Cristina Raab, vice-presidente de Estratégia e Desenvolvimento na Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. Acho que as boas-vindas estão feitas e eu chamo a Cristina aí para o palco. Welcome, Cristina.
Hello, and very happy to be with you today.
Let's go. It's on you now.
Thank you very much. And we are waiting for the presentation, I think, to come up, and here it is already. Well, good afternoon from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, to Brazil. And it's really a great pleasure to be here with you today and to speak about the cradle-to-cradle principles in practice, how we are redefining products made for tomorrow. We live in defining times. At the beginning of last year, the United Nations called for a decade of action to deliver on the global goals for sustainable development and to accelerate sustainable solutions to the world's biggest challenges, from poverty to climate change, health and well-being, inequality, and consumption and production practices. On the next slide, at the same time, leading policies are advancing the importance of not just sustainable and circularity goals, but also to measure progress for implementation. These range from chemical strategies to circular economy action plans, sustainable finance and ESG reporting, and increasing consumer awareness. The momentum is clearly accelerating. This is also reflected in the rise of ESG investments over the past years, with investors increasingly incorporating environmental, social, and governance criteria in the financial evaluations of companies. Yet significant action, impact, and scale remain largely untapped. The recent Circularity Gap report stated that the global economy is only 8.6% circular to date. To keep our world livable and thriving, we need to double global circularity from 8.6% to 17%. For such, we urgently need to move from our current linear economic system beyond a sole recycling economy to a true holistic circular economic system. Much of our global climate crisis is also the result of a take, make, waste extractive economy. Efforts to use energy efficiency and more renewable energy are very important, but can address only about half of the greenhouse gas emissions today. The remaining half must be addressed by transforming the way we make and use products. If we look around us, everything has been designed by someone. Important decisions are made during the design stage of a product. And most importantly, we cannot reverse the impacts of design decisions. We must therefore rethink and redesign how we make and use materials and products for a positive future. And foremost of all, we must transform the system. This is where the cradle-to-cradle thinking comes in. In the acclaimed book Cradle to Cradle, Remaking the Way We Make Things, architect William McDonnell and chemist Michael Braungart lay out an approach that designs out and eliminates the concept of waste. Cradle to Cradle is a design framework characterized by 3 principles derived from nature. Everything is a resource for something else, using clean and renewable energy, and celebrating diversity. Cradle to Cradle drives an essential paradigm shift, namely that everything is a resource for something else in a biological or in a technical cycle. Consumables like cleaning products or biodegradable packaging circulate in a biological cycle. They turn into compost or other materials, which are in turn used to make new products. Consumer goods, such as electronic products or flooring, circulate in a technical cycle. These products are already optimized during the design and manufacturing process for being material resource for their next service life as new products. How do we put the cradle-to-cradle principles into practice? At the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute, we pursue the vision of a world where safe materials and products are designed and manufactured in a prosperous circular economy to maximize health and well-being for people and planet. At the Institute, we are an independent global non-profit organizations. We were founded in 2010, and our work is rooted in the cradle-to-cradle design philosophy. We make the cradle-to-cradle principles a reality and put them into practice by defining a cradle-to-cradle certified, which is the leading multi-attribute, multi-industry, science-based standard for verifying products for the circular economy. The standard is the most ambitious and actionable standard yet for designing and manufacturing products that are safe, circular, and responsibly made. It is a global standard with a multi-attribute framework, and it comes with a third-party verified assessment and product certification. The product standard consists of 5 categories: material health, product circularity, clean air and climate protection, water and soil stewardship, and social fairness. And these are really material sustainability and circularity issues every company and organizations have to address. Cradle-to-Cradle Certified is a future-proof framework for advancing and verifying product innovation, circularity, and also the global sustainable development goals by ensuring that the materials that are used are safe for humans and the environment, that a circular economy is enabled through product and process design, that clean energy is generated and the climate protected, that air, water, and soil resources are safeguarded, and that we embrace a safe, fair, and equitable labor practice that advance human rights and enable strong communities. The cradle-to-cradle framework is a pathway to measure improvements and drive continuous innovation. The product certification is awarded at 4 ascending achievement levels, from bronze to silver to gold to platinum. And the lowest level of achievement among the 5 categories determines the product's overall achievement level. By awarding the certification for the products on the basis of these ascending achievement levels and requiring recertification every 2 years, we encourage and we reward measurable improvement towards a positive impact over time. Let us now dive deeper into the cradle-to-cradle certified product standard and see how these cradle-to-cradle principles are applied in practice. The first category of our standard is material health. Material health ensures that the chemicals and the materials that are used in a product are selected to prioritize the protection of human health and the environment. And more so, to ensure that a positive impact on the quality of materials is assured to enable a high quality future use and cycling of materials and products. We look at material health in 3 steps. We first prepare an inventory around the chemicals or ingredients used in a product. Then the product is being screened against a restricted substance list and then assessed according to toxicological endpoints to be sure it is compatible with human health and the environment. And in the last step, it is all about optimizing chemistry and ingredients of products to innovate for safer and better chemistry. The material health category enables the companies to go beyond existing chemical regulations and international chemical regulations to stay well ahead of those requirements, to deeply understand the chemistry, the composition of a product, and then to optimize the product and also the process chemistry to avoid making regrettable substitutions and use better and safer alternatives. So this is also a framework to really drive innovation around chemistry and materials in products. The second category of the standard, in the next slide, looks at product circularity. And this category ensures that the products are intentionally designed for their next use and are actively cycled in their intended cycling pathways. The product circularity consists of 3 pillars. First, circular sourcing, looking at the cycled or the renewable content of a product. Second, circular design, so designing products either for the biological or for the technical cycle. And then circular systems, enabling the infrastructure to provide multiple uses for the product in a cycle. The companies are, with this product circularity, able to, on the one hand, maximize the input from circular streams. So this is either recycled content or responsibly sourced renewable content. Then also to design the products with the cycling in mind, so with the next uses of the products in mind, and being sure that the product is compatible to be cycled in the biological or technical loop. And then the circular systems, this is all about providing a necessary information to customers or to consumers how to cycle the product, and also to develop the systems that will ensure that the product can be cycled after use. Those 2 first categories, they really stand for the safety and the circularity of the product. The next 3 categories that I will explain in our standard, they relate more to the manufacturing of the product. The third category here is clean air and climate protection. And this is all about addressing the topic of renewable energy and addressing greenhouse gas emissions. This is in the standard being done by, on the one hand, quantifying and setting a baseline for renewable energy use and greenhouse gas emissions that are being produced, and then going into actions of addressing them in the production of the product. In the next slide, the taking action part is really all about contributing to the increased use of renewable energy, to clean air, and to a reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions, and to a stable climate. And companies achieve this either by, making high quality electricity, fuel, or carbon offset purchasing choices. They might employ efficiency measures to reduce energy use and emissions. They might directly increase the share of renewable electricity available on the grid, and overall have a positive impact on the balance of climate changing greenhouse gases. The fourth category in the cradle-to-cradle framework, if we go to the next slide, is water and soil stewardship. This is all about treating water and soil as precious and shared resources, and to protect them and to assure that clean water and healthy soils are available to people and to all organisms. On the next slide, you will see how this category is structured. It looks at the water quality and the water quantity, as well as on soil quality. It looks at access to water, as well as to positive impact projects that are made at company or at a supply chain level. After quantifying, disclosing, and qualifying the impacts in terms of water and soil, companies take actions, for example, in optimizing the chemistry of effluent and sludge that might occur in the production of the product. They implement best practices and technologies to conserve and protect water and soil, and provide drinking water and sanitation and hygiene. And the last category of our standard framework is social fairness. This is all about companies committing to upholding human rights and applying fair and equitable business practices. This category follows a management approach from identifying risks, mitigating the risks, putting policies in place, having a management system to track the performance, being held accountable, and also scaling the solutions within the companies and their supply chains. And with social fairness that enables companies to uphold fundamental human rights and also contributing to a fair and equitable society. The product standard applies across these 5 categories on the product level, but of course translates what the company is doing as well as the supply chain practices in a product standard, in a certification that can be placed on the product and is also easily recognizable by consumers. If we go to the next slide. I would like to show you a few examples how the product standard and the principles and the certifications are applied in practice. We currently apply the Cradle principles and the standard across a variety of sectors, from built environment to textiles and fashion, cosmetics, personal care, cleaning products, furniture, and packaging. We have at the moment around 450 companies that are part of our community, and all of them successfully implement the principles and the standard by considering some keys that are successful to the implementation. So first of all, our standard and the whole cradle-to-cradle thinking and framework are very ambitious and are very advanced. It is a framework that is very holistic, as you have seen. And therefore, it's most important either for companies when they already work on sustainability or circularity initiatives to build on these initiatives. So our framework takes these initiatives typically to the next levels. Or if the company does not have particular sustainability, circularity initiatives in place yet, then this framework can be easily used to form a sustainability and a circularity strategy. Then the Cradle-to-Cradle standard framework is really all about this continuous improvement and the innovation. So many companies use it to inform their product development and their innovation strategies. And for that, it is really important, if the company is large, to include all the relevant departments within a company, from design to sourcing to marketing and also to finance. And since the standard is holistic and addresses many supply chain topics, it is really important to also find the right partners within the value chain for long-term collaboration and really for innovating for circularity and sustainability. And last and not least, it's always important to have the leadership, the decision makers, the senior management on board to really use the framework and the principles to redefine sustainable business success. I have a few examples for you, and I'm really proud to start with 2 examples from Latin America. Triplex Acema from Colombia is using the framework to optimize material composition and production processes of their wood ceilings and walls. So they have a range of wood ceilings and walls certified to the bronze level, and they are used in public buildings such as universities, theaters, and government buildings. The next example is from the fashion space, that is CNA Brazil and its local suppliers. They work together on a range of certified garments and recently launched a circular denim line on the Brazilian market. A more international example is L'Oréal USA. This is a company that uses the Cradle-to-Cradle framework to optimize their operations and certify all their hair care products under the Cradle-to-Cradle certification. And here you see an example of Garnier. Another example from the furniture space is Herman Miller. They have several of their office and home furniture certified. And they use the certification framework to inform their design processes and also to inform the material choices that would go into a chair. And the last example I have here for you today is Dopper. That is a Dutch company. They have a range of water bottles from different materials certified, and they use the framework to continuously innovate their range of water bottles for best design, for production processes, and also for the best circular sourcing practices. We have, of course, many more examples of certified products across sectors, from companies of different sizes, large companies, smaller companies, startup companies, and all of these examples can be found on our website. And we hope also to welcome more Brazilian companies to our Cradle to Cradle community very soon. How we design and make products today really shapes the world we will inhabit tomorrow. And Cradle to Cradle principles and our global standard framework really help companies to innovate for positive futures and also give assurance to investors that the products and also the companies they are investing in conform to the highest leadership of sustainability and circularity. And with that, I'm coming to the end of my presentation and hope that we will have a good discussion and look forward to your questions.
Me again. Thank you very much to share with us such amazing content, Christina. It's an honor to have you here this afternoon. And it's the Q&A time. So I'll ask you the first one. This is the ESG month, and we are talking a lot about stakeholder capitalism. The suppliers are important stakeholders of a company, so the question is, when a company is thinking about adopting the cradle-to-cradle system, how important is to get the suppliers on board so that they can invest and develop solutions together?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And it is actually key to get the suppliers on board. So the framework is really a framework that applies on a company level, but it also applies on the manufacturing of the product. And if we look at the composition of a product, in terms of ingredients, in terms of chemistry, when we look at how it's being produced, this is all being done typically in the supply chains with suppliers. So suppliers are absolutely critical in the cradle-to-cradle framework. A collaboration between the companies and their suppliers is essential, on the one hand, to really receive the information that is important for the product assessment as such, but on the other hand, really to together innovate and find the best optimization for the product and the best solutions that can then be placed to the customers and to the consumers. So I would say cradle-to-cradle framework and principles are not possible if there's no collaboration really across the supply chain as well as within the companies across the different departments.
And how can we take to the next level that framework with all the chain? The manufacturing chain.
Yeah, I think in the next, first of all, what is really important is to educate the supply chain about the cradle-to-cradle principles and also what the product assessment is about. So often, we see that sometimes, the uptake is really driven from the supply chain. So sometimes the suppliers are already familiar, with the principles. They are the ones that would want to work with the brands or with the retailers, for that matter, so the companies, to really drive some innovative solutions. And sometimes, the interest really comes from the company and then carried forward in the supply chain. So I think in general, education is important around the principles and also the information that is required and around the methodologies. It's also important to make really clear which role every company and supplier has, in the product assessment. And then it's really important also to take inspiration from the many examples that are out there. So we are not starting from scratch. We have around 450 companies that use the framework at this point in time globally, and to really learn from the experiences that are out there to be even faster, when innovating or when developing a new product together.
Great. Another question here from Juliana Tenorio. Do you have any material about Cradle to share?
Yes, so all our materials, the standard framework, the best practices example, articles from some of our community, they can be found on our website. So it is all open source. The information, we make this publicly available as a nonprofit information. We also have some inspirational booklets that show some journeys of the companies that apply cradle to cradle thinking. So it's all available on the website. We also have a few webinars on the website where you can listen to companies that applied the cradle to cradle principles. They share their experiences. And in case someone is interested in a hardcore technical webinar, we also have one on our website. So you just can go there and then go to the webinar button and you will see a lot of information.
Now a question from Renata Faber, our colleague. Christina, what is the interest on C2C by corporates in Brazil? You mentioned CNA in your presentation. Is the interest growing in the region?
Yeah, so we see that the interest in general is slowly growing. I would say if we look at Latin America, most of the inquiries and the interest we receive are from Brazil or from Colombia. And a little bit also from the Chile region. But we have to say at the moment we have around 6 companies in Brazil that apply already, the framework and work towards certification. But we definitively see a big potential there. And I think the first one is really to make the thinking more known on the Brazilian market. So this is important because there is an immense potential as Brazil produces all different types of products that we're working in, from packaging to cosmetics to textiles to building products. And therefore the framework can be very easily applied. And I just believe that there's more awareness raising that needs to be done. So events like today really help very much to get it more into the Latin American countries. We see in some countries also a driver, of course, from government policies. So some countries in Latin America have circular economy action plans. So this is also helping the awareness around cradle to cradle. And then in general, we see it from companies that either, have some investor driver behind it, that might be bigger companies, supplying to global markets, or from companies that are maybe more on the medium-sized and on the startup side, and they want to differentiate themselves, with the cradle-to-cradle framework.
Great. Now a question from Lily Massieni. Is it possible to demand CTC certification from the suppliers? Contractually.
So that really depends on the company. So it's a decision of the company. It is a voluntary sustainability certification. But we have in our community several companies that make this as a requirement for sourcing particular products. So they specify the certification for their suppliers. They would give preferential status to suppliers that can fulfill a cradle-to-cradle certification. So yes, it depends on the company. It can be legally requested from suppliers. But the better way is really to find those suppliers, that you would form a long-term partnership with, that have the right mindset. You need to have suppliers with the right mindset also for the Cradle principles, and being willing to share the information that's needed for the product assessment, at least, with our assessors to do the evaluation. So the better way than, just imposing it on the supply chain is really finding the right suppliers and the right partners for the future there.
Now the question is from Pedro Valente. Christina, do you have any number or measurement of companies who have adopted the certification and have performed better financially once they moved to a C2C operation?
Yeah, we are tracking that, of course, and let's say the companies are also tracking this because they're the first that need to track it. I cannot give you, let's say, a particular number, of how much percentage, let's say, sales might increase or positioning in market. But what we can say is that it has helped many companies to stay competitive. That's the first thing, because nowadays there are, of course, different certifications in the markets. There are different frameworks. There is the risk, let's say, around greenwashing also. So it has helped companies to stay competitive in that they had a holistic framework and also that they had a validation and a verification of their claims, to be sustainable and circular. So I think the competitive angle is definitely important. And we have also seen that, through Cradle to Cradle certification, new customer relations could be formed. But I would say it really depends also on the sector. So if we take, for example, a built environment sector, when building products are made, often, big building programs or owners and developers would ask, for circular materials or Cradle to Cradle certified products. And that will then, generate also new business for the companies that are able to provide this. Or on the cosmetic space, it's really all about positioning the company, towards the consumer to be sustainable and to be responsible for the future. So again, the numbers really vary by company. For some companies, it's probably just to stay competitive and survive in the market. For some companies, it's having an advantage and maybe having more sales towards consumers, and for some it is really opening new clients and new customers.
I don't know who made this question, but it's about it's accessible to a small or medium business to adopt the CTC.
Yes, so in our community, more than half of the companies are medium-sized companies and smaller companies. And it is definitively accessible. Typically, when the first certification is done, there is, of course, a certain cost that is involved in that, collecting all the information required, maybe optimizing the process, going through the learning process of the Cradle to Cradle principles. But typically what these companies would do, they really integrate the Cradle to Cradle principles in their business strategy and in their innovation framework. So it becomes really part of how they operate a business. And in that, it is quite accessible for these companies as well.
This question was from Ligia Dembinski. Now, a question from Paula de la Barba Pereira. Is it possible to certificate only one product, C2C, while having others products still being produced based on linear model?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it is possible to do that for a company, because we understand that it's about this continuous improvement and in expanding the product portfolio. But we allow, companies definitively to start with one product line, to learn about the principles, to apply them, to gain experience with that. And then, of course, with the intention to expand it across several product lines. So that's what I meant, with medium-sized companies or startups. They very often have many or maybe all their products are certified. It really depends on the strategy. And with the bigger companies, of course, the portfolio is much larger. So it takes a while to roll it out. And, it might not be that all product ranges are certified. So it is definitely possible for companies to take a step-by-step approach. But ultimately, we would like to shift, the majority of the portfolio to cradle-to-cradle principles.
Another one from Renata Faber. Can you talk a bit more about how companies become more competitive when they adopt cradle-to-cradle principles?
Mm-hmm. So I think one aspect is that, as we discussed in the first question, they form really strong partnerships with suppliers. So I think that makes them often competitive, because there's a lot of co-development, let's say, and collaboration with the suppliers for innovative and for new solutions. So that is one key aspect, is really strong supplier relation. The other one is because it is so holistic, there is rarely, something that is comparable in terms of product certification. And it's a certification that has a validation, by third parties and allows to use this product mark. So having, companies using the mark and positioning it in the market, signals also very responsible and circular and forward-thinking practices. So that's much about, building this also into the branding and the positioning of the company. And another aspect is that we see that it helps companies to fulfill certain policy requirements, from countries or from states, if they're put in place, and make them also more attractive towards investors.
Another one from Ligia Dimbinski. How a company that doesn't have a substantially sales volume can mobilize partners and suppliers?
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's all about convincing them and inspiring them, and bringing them really in the mindset, that this is the right approach to move forward into the future. So we have this sometimes that companies don't have the purchasing volume, from suppliers. There might just be one, company or one customer of those suppliers amongst many. And we had cases where, the company was really able to convince and, to explain the principles to the suppliers, and of course, forming this longer term partnership. And in some cases it was not possible, and the companies, switched suppliers, so found really those that were the partners for the future. So in general, it again helps to show best practice examples, to have workshops, to bring companies together, to share their experiences, to also show to the suppliers that it can be done, and that there's a competitive advantage to it.
One from Karine Flausino. There are prerequisites for a company to implement C2C structure and principles.
So to start with the framework, there are no particular prerequisites, because the framework as such, so the standard, we have these criteria in the 5 categories, they are really a framework for the companies to put a sustainability or circularity approach into place. So companies can really use this framework to start to get on the journey of the sustainability and circularity topics. To achieve the certification, of course, the bronze level needs to be achieved. So there need to be certain criteria met in these 5 standard categories that I explained for a company to obtain the product mark. But, there are no particular prerequisites to use the framework and to start getting on this journey.
And we have time for a last one. We see books, clothes, and carpets being manufactured with the cradle-to-cradle principles. How far can cradle-to-cradle go? Can everything we consume be manufactured under the cradle-to-cradle principles?
Yeah, so a broad variety of products can be certified. So we, for example, we do not certify food. So that is not what we do. And we have a few categories of products that are outlined that we might also not certify for particular reasons. So let's say we have some boundaries of what can be certified, but most of the common product categories out there, be it business to business or business to consumer, could be certified. So books, as you said, packaging, clothing, we have a lot in the built environment. So glass, cement, flooring, furniture, everything that you would find in a room, could be Cradle certified. And we also see quite some traction in the automotive industry. So in the automotive parts that would go into a car, as well as in consumer electronics. So that's only beginning, and also in the kids' toy sector.
A lot of sectors.
A lot of sectors. And of course, some of these products, are much more complex to certify than others. It really depends, of course, on the composition of the product, how many parts you have in there, how complex the supply chain is. But in principle, is applicable to, any product that could go in the biological or in the technical cycle.
Well, again, thank you very much to share with us such an important theme this afternoon, Christina. It was really nice to meet you. And we are really interested in Brazil here to know more about all the cradle-to-cradle system process and all about ESG, as you can see.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. And there is really an immense potential in Brazil with the Brazilian companies, stakeholders, and also consumers to be a leader around circularity and sustainability topics. And we really look forward to supporting these aspirations and help companies to get on the ESG journey.
Quero aproveitar também agora para agradecer a todos vocês que ficaram conosco, enviaram perguntas. O tema é um tema que realmente pede, né, como disse a Cristina, todo um processo de educação, né, das companhias, dos indivíduos. Eu acho que isso é o que a gente espera conseguir durante todo esse mês de evento sobre ESG. A gente realmente acredita que a informação é o primeiro passo para a gente conseguir gerar a transformação. Bom, não se esqueçam, né? Para quem tiver interesse, parece que agora saiu aqui o nosso QR Code. Quem ainda não fez a inscrição, é só bater o celular ali na tela, voltou. É só bater ali na tela, fazer a inscrição para poder concorrer aí à bolsa de 50% no MBA de ESG and Impact, e teremos serão sorteados todas as semanas uma bolsa aqui durante o nosso evento. Bom, ficamos por aqui, mas ainda tem muita coisa interessante, não só hoje, mas também nos próximos dias. Se organizem para poder acompanhar. Se não puderem acompanhar ao vivo, vai estar lá também depois, para que todo mundo possa, aí no seu tempo, ter acesso a essa informação. E também, né, não custa nada lá dar o joinha, para sinalizar que vocês estão curtindo o nosso evento e que a gente acertou aqui nas pautas que estamos trazendo diariamente para vocês. Grande abraço, e até a próxima.